During the height of the Infinite Empire, the Rakata were lords and masters of several worlds, one of which was the planet Cursant. The Rakata added it to their list of invaded planets and took the humans of Cursant as slaves to the great empire. This conquest by the Rakata was thanks to the Rakatan hyperdrive, one of the most advanced and sophisticated technologies in interstellar travel, also being a very exclusive and unique technology. Many inhabitants of a great variety of planets tried to travel through the galaxy, and the most common way for these trips was through the use of generation ships. These were an ancient class of ships used to colonize worlds throughout the different planets within the near systems. They were massive ships utilizing different compartments from growing food, with primary and secondary power generators, with living quarters and entertainment models. The main purpose of its design was for the primary and future generations to teach their progeny how to run the ship and colonize worlds. The knowledge was passed down until the destination was reached and the colony was established. In other words, entire generations could be born and die inside these ships, so one of the biggest problems with this type of ship was that their journey was at supply level and they took centuries to reach their destinations. The Rakata's presence in the galaxy culminated in a significant outbreak of technology across the galaxy. Thanks to this invasion of Cursant, the humans learned about the Rakata's technology and were able to develop an improved idea of generation ships. These were the sleeper ships. A sleeper ship is an interstellar spacecraft that uses rudimentary dimensional drive technology to achieve faster than light travel, this through unknown methods. The crew of the sleeper ship is kept in suspended animation during the journey, which can last for decades or centuries, well beyond a normal human lifespan. This travel technology was made possible by another discovery within the Coral system, the Carbonite. The Carbonite could be used to freeze spacers for the long journeys among the stars. Following the fall of the Rakata, Cursant's progress continued apace. Thousands of people had been born on the planet, but its citizens continued to fail to reach the stars. Limited to a single world, they depleted their planet resources through the overuse of their generations, so territorial expansion was necessary. So, the use of the sleeper ships was a great achievement. Aboard these ships, the Cursant colonies spread to various worlds such as Alsakan, Metellus, Xim, Alderaan, Corellia, and it was that one of those lost Cursant sleeper ships reached the planets Berserk and Xer VIII within a region of the galaxy called the Tion Cluster. What is called the Tion Cluster is a star cluster located in the outer rim. A star cluster is defined as a group of stars formed from the same origin, a molecular cloud, and thanks to this close relationship, each star is gravitationally linked. In addition, each of these stars can have planets orbiting around them, forming systems such as the Argai system that contains the planet Argai, the Dravion system, the Liana system, each with its respective planet that gives the system its name. All these planetary systems make up the so-called Tion Cluster. The Tion Cluster was at the edge of one of the galaxy's spiral arms. Its western border was defined by the line of Canaver, Jantoria, Liana, and Forentuthe, while its southern rim was defined by a line from Forentuthe through Sahelindil to Delalt. In the east fringe was defined by a line from Delalt to Raxus Prime, and its northern border by a line from Raxus to Canaver. The Tion Cluster contained about 12,000 stars, orbited by almost 600 habitable planets, and it was that from Cursant, the different travelers arrived at Berserk and Xer VII. Limited technology prevented the Cursantes from having further contact with the galactic core, eventually forgetting their origins and remaining isolated from the rest of the galaxy, being renamed the Tionese. Over hundreds of years, the Tionese waste no time, establishing a new society, developing their technology from the debris of Rakatan ships and creating weaponry like beam tubes that were primitive blasters-like weapons. An important advance was they developed their own version of the hyperdrive. Due to the lack of knowledge and without mastery of interstellar travel, the Tionese formed a formal local hyperdrive. However, creating hyperdrives is only half of the story. The stars of the galaxy are not in one static place. They are in constant motion, and with enough time, their relative position will change, remaking stellar paths and erasing known routes. And then, for accurate and safe travel, they need constant updates of known routes to avoid colliding with objects, planets, or stars, and the computers of the tiny ships were not capable of performing these calculations. So, they decided to use a navigation method called Hyperspace Beacon or Xim Beacons, which was characterized by its limited travel capacity since it only allowed travel within a defined area. In a simple way, brave explorers made repeated microjumps into unknown space to later scan the area forward and repeat this task as many times as they were enough. Of course, with a respective level of danger since many of them died crashing celestial bodies. After performing this task, each of the microjumps were joined to complete a full route. Now, this ridiculous amount of information to calculate the route, estimate positions, and avoiding stellar objects will be a very demanding task for the limited computers on board the Tionese ships. So, to solve this problem, they opted for hyperspace beacons, huge supercomputers built in open space along established pathways where a navigation computer will communicate with a beacon, requesting jump points to its intended destination, and the beacon will contact other beacons, calculating the fastest and safest route. This was one of the reasons for the Tionese's isolation in this area of space, its limitation with interstellar travel. The year 25,200 before Battle of Yavin was a date that marked history. The fall of the greatest empire that the galaxy had witnessed was a milestone for posterity, and as if it were a divine fact, that same year, in the Tion Cluster, within the Argai system, on the planet Argai, Xer VIII was born, a Tionese nobleman whom he and his son forged an empire within the Tion Cluster. The Argaians, because of their cold planet, with little to do, have been renowned and cursed since the first days of the Tion as hard-beaten traders and daring pilots with a habit of turning to piracy when it suits them. Circa 25,150 before Battle of Yavin, Xer made himself the lord of planet Argai and began rapid expansion, and despite this explosion of power within the kingdom of Cron, there was no concern. The Tion Cluster region was divided into the Kingdom of Cron, which was a government ruled by the King of Cron from the capital world of Chandar. The other division of the Tion Cluster was the Livian League. It consisted of worlds such as Amarin, Gentoria, Canaver, and Livian. The capital planet was the Severo. Xer's power grew over the years, and as a pirate chief and together with his fleets, they explored the corners of the Tion Cluster, creating lairs and secret routes, and at the same time taking advantage of the hideouts to harass transport ships in the outlying regions of the Kingdom of Cron and pillage faraway worlds like Rudrick and Kalula. The navigation computers were very low technological, as said before. They used the navigation method called Hyperspace Beacon or Xim Beacons. So, Xer took advantage of this to use navigation data in the supercomputers and wait in total darkness for incoming ships at each system, or even Xer pirates were blocking the space lanes so they could get them out of hyperspace and ambush them. Xer continued to enrich himself and expand his ambitions. Later, he seized Dravion in order to create his own little kingdom, the Kingdom of Argai. And despite all this, the Kingdom of Cron and the court of Chandar continued to pay no attention to Xer's growing power as within the kingdom was busy with other problems. In less than a decade, the kingdom of Argai stretched from Dravion to Pana, and Xer could no longer be ignored. Ferris, king of Kron, tried to bribe Xer, offering him titles of nobility in exchange for swearing allegiance to him. However, Xer declined the offer, promising to return with a proper tribute in a month. He assembled a large fleet at Pana and then attacked Kron. Ferris and his supporters fled, leading to Xer being proclaimed the new king of Kron. In his oath, he promised that his name will be feared even by the stars. From that moment, the most important event from the history of Xer took place: the Cronese Sweeps. This campaign of conquest was characterized as taking control of the entire kingdom of Kron. Xer sent the warlords and nobles that he had the most confidence to fight against the independent worlds. His tactics were simple: taking hostages the heirs of important people from all over the kingdom to swear allegiance to him. Those who didn't succumbed to the power of Xer. While the sweeps were ongoing, Xer's reputation was overshadowed by his son, Xim, who rose as a warlord during the conflict. Xim quickly gained notoriety across the kingdom as he destroyed both the Timber Palace of Pasmi and the High Fane of Zo on Nuswata. Xer broke into Kadinth, Jaminar, and Barzeg, kingdoms allied to Kron, and then advanced against the worlds of the so-called Black Spiral, winning Kalula, Brygia, and Tion, and building glittering palaces of Raxus. The Livian League, consisting of Livian, Decevro, and Canaver, was the only force capable of opposing the Pirate King. They defeated Xer's fleets at Amarin and Lorath, angering the king. He withdrew from the League and focused on building an empire in Kron, expanding his network of navigation beacons and establishing an efficient bureaucracy. Although he made it clear that he postponed his ambitions, he organized Kron into 3 provinces with Chandar, Raxus Prime, and Kadinth as centers of power, but the king's court referred to Xer's powers as the 4 thrones of Kron, accounting for the several without having conquered it yet. During 25,130 before Battle of Yavin, 20 years after Xer took Argai, the king decided to cede the throne to his son Xim and retreat to the planet Raxus. Now, Xim, as the leader of the military power that his father built, decided to go for the lands that his father was denied, the Livian League. Xim forces quickly smashed the League at the Battle of Jantoria. Later, Xim prepared the race of Decevro as an example to those who would oppose him. However, Xim was dissuaded from this course of action when Maslavar Tiatov, the military ruler of Decevro, showed him the world's first-class military academies and bureaucracy. Impressed, Xim spared Decevro and proclaimed it the 4th throne. The philosophy of Decevro will fuel the later stages of Xim expansionist period. Now, with the 4 thrones under one crown, the kingdom of Kron was proclaimed the Empire of Xim. Xim expanded his empire by conquering worlds and building navigation beacons throughout the Tion Cluster. After his visit to Decevro, the next step was the conquest of the Athenian worlds from 25,126 before Battle of Yavin to 25,116 before Battle of Yavin. Xim took from Barzeg and Thanium, making Thanium the 5th throne of his empire. One force moved to conquer Maldont, and from there divided to take Pesagam and Thul, while another force took Ethane and Farthanium. Another force moved from Thanium to take Galug, Musak, Galidran, Draukis, and Renvar. Finally, a third force from Arkan conquered Nardolin, Bartholium, Ethulum, and Vinus. Species deemed worthy by Xim such as the Burg and Stenax, were enslaved. Others were exterminated. Tionese settlers colonized empty worlds, and their numbers steadily increased as part of Xim's strategy of conquest. The Athenian worlds became the largest and wealthiest of Xim's new provinces. Later, Xim's advance ended at Parthenium, Vinx, and Thule. Xim ruled a vast expanse of space with many rich worlds. Shipyards and factories in Jaminer, Cadine and Thanium produced Kirin-powered warships, lethal droids, and merchant ships. Xim built great palaces at Raxus, Amarin, and Argai, and a royal retreat at Nuswata with the famous Forbidden Gardens. For all but Xim's court, looking at the gardens was a death sentence. According to legend, they were tended by a group of slaves blinded at birth, and their land enriched with the blood of traitors, failed military officers, and defeated adversaries. To glimpse the Forbidden Gardens was to know that the end was near. Xim's forces then turned to the edge, moving from Conaver to Janodral Mizar, before splitting to conquer Makemte and Quermia, and turning south towards Tinatron and Pakuni. The second force moved from Janodral Mizar to Utaborg and Utusk. Afterwards, Xim faced a fierce challenge in Ranrun against the Queen of Ranrun, in Drexu. The people of Ranrun fought against Xim's army for every inch of land on the planet. Despite being defeated by Xim, Indrexel later made a strong impression on the pirate. In the end, Utusk became the sixth throne. Xim forces were also pushing past the Indrexel spiral. There, according to the records, they encountered systems colonized by humans in the age before the ascension of Kron and its rival states of Tion. Xim forces quickly expanded to these worlds as well, which were called the Kirin Reaches, from 25,120 before Battle of Yavin to 25,096 before Battle of Yavin. Rich in the valuable military resource Kirium, the regions were a vital addition to Xim's military-industrial complex, and three forces were mobilized to conquer the region. One moved from Pakuni to Zorais via Ulonsus. The second moved from Kalula to Dalalv, then to Valshever and Astigon. From there, Xim moved via Altratone to Winhes, where he joined the third force sent from Urkana to take Huranom and Far Varzeg. Both forces then moved to conquer Winhes Minor. Huranom and Astigon then became the 7th and 8th thrones of the Empire. Years after battles and victories, Xim returned to his home Argai to be reunited with Xer. Xim arrived at his father's great palace to the surprise that the former queen of Ranrun in Drexu had joined his father. Taking his precautions, Xim greeted his father and gave him hundreds of treasures and leaving the best of all, the head of the king of Kron Varys and the end of the kingdom of Kron. After hearing the news, Indrexel begins to fill Xer with ideas against Xim. Seeing that, Xim gets mad at the woman. To calm the situation, Xer confesses that he has a surprise for Xim, and upon entering a room in the palace, Xer introduced him to his brothers, whom Xim had no idea of his existence: Xil, Zam, Zik, and Zook. Shocked by the event, Xim doesn't take well the idea that they have hidden the existence of his brothers from him. He also knows that now Xer's wealth will have to be divided into 5. After this event, Xim takes his weapon to finish off each of his brothers, and to close it with a flourish, and just as Xer did with his father at the time, Xim does the same with his father, proclaiming himself the only king. By the end of the expansionist period, Xim, known as Xim the Despot, ruled a vast domain. The Despot's territory extended from the Radama Void to Yavim, including hundreds of thousands of worlds linked together by a network of jump beacons. Adventurous Tionese scouts and merchants explore beyond this beacon network, hoping to win the despot's favor by discovering new worlds. Some of those scouts returned to the Kirin reaches, describing meetings with alien traders who served ruthless, slug-like creatures, the Hutts. The Hutts became the despot's obsession. He burned to add Hutt worlds such as Lush, Kovari, and Slaheron to his empire, and prepared for war, taking the old Rakatan title, Daritha, for his own. Here was a civilization he couldn't just crush. The Hutts were many, powerful, and ruthless. Xim braced himself for the worst. He invested wealth in the Kirin reaches, expanded the network of beacons that provided safe passages for both warships and trade. He sent traders and explorers to strange stars never visited by the Tionese. And according to legends, Xim himself explored strange stars and reached distant Pelgrine, visiting and speaking with the legendary oracles. Xim found interesting the lands of the Hutts, beyond their empire, the so-called Hutt space, a limited area of the galaxy where the Hutt ruled over various worlds. The Hutts are beings originating from the world of Baral, and it's characteristic of the Hutt culture not to preserve or maintain historical information as it happened, which is why many data on their species are contradictory, since it's not known where they got interstellar technology to travel. However, the expansion of the Hutts from the beginning was such that the conquest and extermination of hundreds of species was caused by these great beings. The Hutt space formed sometime after 25,200 before Battle of Yavin, and for the next few years, they were a very fearsome government. Xim decided not to go to war immediately against the Hutts. Even in Kovari, an embassy with 24 Hutt nobles was created, and as a Tionese representative was Xim's most trusted advisor, Oziath. The Hutts came to this meeting with a juicy proposal for them. They offered Xim and the Tionese the chance to be particularly favored slaves. The false peace between the pirate and the huge slugs was just that, false. So, the pirate took offense at that and returned to Chandar to prepare for war. The problem with the Hutt slime is that no matter how hard you rub, their field just won't come off. In the 25,102 before Battle of Yavin, Xim began the first attacks against the Hutts, launching two fronts against Slaheron and Kovari. The looting of Kovari was brutal, and the attack of Slaheron failed. The despot's warships were forced back to the Eye of Zo, later known as Kessel, where many were lost in a nest of black holes. But despite this victory, the Hutts realized that they had severely underestimated the Tionese and the Daritha. The Hutts are a species that is directed in clans, and despite being ambitious and seeking power, the differences between these clans was a limitation for an adequate organization. For a species that feels a rejection of unification, extreme times deserve thrive times, so a Hutt did the unimaginable. The union of the Hutt clans. His name was Cossack. He did so by renouncing the usual bossman retinue, traveling by means of his own tail, and guaranteeing each clan leader that he will expand their base of power if they pledge their complete support to defeat Xim the Despot. Salivating at the prospect of profit, the largest clans agreed, while the smaller ones joined soon after, so as not to be left out. In his war against Xim, Cossack employed weak mercenaries to harass shipping lanes and extort not Hutt-allied businesses, forcing Xim to disperse his army, gradually losing support to the Cossacks' brides. The casualties in Xim's army were considerable. However, seeing that the pirates' tactics were already studied by the Hutts, Xim changed the strategy to increase the defense of his army. His shipwrights forged dreadnought hulls speckled with a Kirin that would reflect the laser beams. But the ore was the most precious supply at the time, since the Kirin reaches had been mined and exhausted of their namesake. So, Xim and his men were always looking for more Kirin. After seeing Xim's tenacity in war, Cossack decided to challenge him to a ritual combat, a centuries-old tradition among the Hutts, and is considered a way to test the power and determination of combatants. Cossack chose Vontor as the site of the fight. This challenge seemed unwise to Xim, but it turned out to be cunning, as Vontor was rich in Kyrium. Xim accepted the challenge and planned to mine Kyrium to strengthen his fleet and control the galaxy. So, in 25,100 before Battle of Yavin, took place the first Battle of Vontor. Having staged hundreds of battles on Vontor's surface, the Hutts were indeed aware of the Kyrium's capabilities. Notably that the Vontoran Kyrium not only reflected lasers, but redirected them with a blinding glare. Cossack knew that Xim would be drawn to the Kyrium, so the Hutt leaked the planetary coordinates to Xim's spies. He also reduced the weak-weight defense to a small amount so Xim wouldn't suspect that it was a trap and could have a victory placebo on Vontor. And lastly, he planned to hijack the beacon network that was around the world to trap Xim and overthrow him with a minor force, and in the end, Cossack was right. So it happened. Xim reached Vontor before Cossack and eliminated the weak way without casualties. He summoned his fleet and ordered the extraction of Kyrium and its placement on the ships. However, he realized that the intense luminosity of the Kyrium made it difficult for his fleet to form, and the organic eye of living beings hampered their pilots in maneuvering their ships. Cossack arrived in time to find Xim's pirates trying to remove the Kyrium plates. Cossack launched his ships at Xim's fleet, not caring about the aim, only lighting up the stars and causing Xim's pilots to do damage to themselves. At one point, Xim lost most of his fleet, including his flagship, the Ivan Scimitar, mainly to friendly fire. Xim fled from Vontor, vowing never to trust living things again. He replaced his organic army with war robots, the famous Xim's war robots. Cossack, still celebrating his victory, received Xim's challenge to a second ritual combat. Despite it being an unprecedented act since not being of another species had proposed this Hutt tradition, so in Vontor, the same year that the first Battle of Vontor, in 25,100 before Battle of Yavin, took place, the second Battle of Vontor. Xim enlisted the help of an elite army, the Dwinarvolon Star Lancers, who inflicted heavy casualties on Cossack's mercenaries. A huge difference in this second battle with the first was that through all the ranks of the army of the Star Lancers ran a fervor and a devotion to the Daritha. All were willing to die for Xim and for the Hutts, no matter how much the mercenaries are paid. In the immensity of treasures, the true value is not found in coins or precious metals. As they fought, Xim's war robots extract the Kyrium from the planet. The Hutt implemented the same strategy from the first battle, without anticipating the versatility of Xim's war robots. The mechanical beings didn't experience the glare side effect like the organic beings, and had no problem calculating the trajectory and turbo laser adjustments necessary for combat in space. The second battle ended when Xim broke through Cossack's fleet, carrying off valuable loot of Vontoran Kyrium. For Xim, the second Battle of Vontor wasn't a victory. Cossack, after suffering losses with the Star Lancers, sent 3 emissaries to recruit new species for his army. Dojundo went to Voltran, where the inhabitants were recovering from Xim's attacks. Axkata searched for the children of the Source in Klatooin, and Churava freed the Nikto on Kintan. These actions solidified the alliance between the Hutts and his army in their fight against Xim. Years of conflict later, it's not known for sure who proposed the third ritual combat, but it ended up happening. Xim and Cossack arrived to meet one last time on Vontor, at the third Battle of Vontor. The Daritha and his fierce followers, backed by legions of new war droids, descended from the space to Vontor, but the Hutts responded with countless Nikto, Vodran, and Clatuinian warriors forced into servitude. According to legends, this battle was of an unimaginable scale, that its participants, after multiple reinforcements, came to comprise almost a quarter of the species and automata in the galaxy. In numbers alone, few battles in history rival the third. Xim's war robots couldn't withstand the fierce resistance of the Hutt army, who, fueled by spies and in a berserker state, lured them to the Vontor underground, sacrificing themselves to dismantle the machines. The sacrifice of each of them is what changed the course of the battle and returned Xim's human captains to the Hutt side, which is why in some versions it's maintained that Xim was betrayed by his own commanders. And Xim even survived an attack by his officials after being shot in the face. Versions of the story say that Xim survived because after his defeat in the first battle of Vontor, and seeing that biological organisms were inferior, he changed part of his body for robotic parts, removed his eyes with his own hands, so he could use optical lenses of their war robots. During the third battle of Vontor, for the first time, Xim's allies saw that their despot could be defeated and therefore their empire could fall. The third battle of Vontor marked the end of Xim's reign, who was captured and displayed in chains in Hutt space. After the battle, the Hutts, Clatuinians, Vodrans, and Niktos signed the Treaty of Vontor. This treaty established the Hutts as eternal lords of the other three species. Xim's end varies in each version of the story. However, many say that Xim was captured and blinded, and eventually died being a slave in the dungeons of Cossack and Varl, though Taiwanese history claimed that he was treacherously killed at Vontor. Whatever the end, Xim's name will live on throughout the galaxy, and his story will remain as an ambiguous colossus, whose ambition led him to unimaginable heights of conquest, but also to deep falls in his quest for dominance.